Hello, Keith Rucker here at VintageMachinery.org. Guys, today we're back over here on the Monarch 612 lathe restoration that we've been working on here, and a little sprint here of series of getting things done. And today, what I want to work on is getting the compound that goes up on this machine fixed up and ready to go. So just so you'll know, I actually have two compounds for this lathe. The one that was on it when I got it, and also just like we got a tailstock off of a lathe that was being scrapped, I went ahead and got the compound off the second lathe as well, because the compound that came on this one had a few little small issues with it, nothing major, it was usable, but I went ahead and grabbed the other one just because it was available. And what I want to do today, I think, is we're going to take both those compounds apart, kind of take the best parts of the two and make one that we're going to put back over here and use on this machine. So let's go over to the bench. We'll take a look at the compounds. There are a few little small differences between them, but they're more or less the same. And we'll see if we can get one fixed up and ready to go on this machine. So these are the two compounds that I have, and they are a little bit different, but they're all both very similar at the same time. And so if I remember right, I think that this one here is the one that came on my lathe. This is the one that I got with that tailstock. And all in all, this one is, I think, in better shape than this one. However, this one's at least a little bit longer and has a little bit more travel in it, which I really kind of like the idea of. Just so you can kind of see this one here, when you look at, when you crank it, it's real stiff, but look at how much backlash is in there. The screw in here, or the nut in there, has evidently got a fair amount of wear in it. Compare that to this one over here. This one turns as smooth as butter, and I mean, there is practically zero backlash in there. I mean, I can barely turn it. I mean, there's maybe it's like a thou. I mean, it's nearly perfect. The dials, this one here is kind of rusty, crusty. This one here is a little bit crisper. Also, I kind of like this one that has a feature where you can adjust your zero on this real easily, whereas this one doesn't have that inner part that you can turn around like that. So I think what I want to do is, again, take both of these apart, and assuming that the screw inside here, everything is kind of the same, I'm going to see if I can put the screw or the nut from this one on this one, take the dial off of this one and put on this one, and try to use this one if we can. But I think I'm going to have to take them completely apart to make sure that they're compatible with one another. There are some subtle differences you can see in the castings, a little bit of differences. Obviously, it's a different size, so you know, I've noticed a few other little small differences between these. So we'll take them apart and kind of see what we need to do. So let's see if we can get them apart. All right, we're going to start with this one and just start taking it apart. Start with the way wipers down here on the end. I think that screw broke. It did. I think that screw is bent. It is. Yeah, that thing took a hit at some point. Let me see if I can get that one out over there. Great. I was afraid it was going to break. I'll have to worry about that in a little bit. It was coming out though, so maybe it won't give me too much trouble. That one's broken right there too. Looks like that took a hit at some point in time and just bent all those screws. All right, we got the screw here. This is for adjusting the gib. Go ahead and take it out while we're right there at it. Get this screw here out. I think that this is what's going to hold the nut on the inside. I'm not sure. That's my guess. And let's see about getting this end piece off. There's just a bunch of gunk down in these socket cap screws. I'm going to just screw this out. All right. This is the other side of the gib. This is what adjusts that gib in there. Tighten it and loosen it. You just move those screws on either side and it kind of moves it back and forth. And let's see if we can get this to slide apart. See if I can drive this gib out. The gib is tapered, but I could tell that this was a small end. This is the large end down here. And see if I can get that the rest of the way out. There it comes. Doesn't look too bad. That ought to come off a lot easier. There we go. There we go. And those two parts are separated. And other than being dirty, it doesn't appear to be in bad shape. Well, this is the one that I was hoping I was going to be able to use, the one that's a little bit longer. But once I get into this, I'm not so certain that that's going to be an option. Biggest thing is I know that this nut has a lot of wear in it, and my plan was I was going to take the nut out of the other one and put in this one, but it appears that this is just a cast boss on this part. This nut is not removable, which is kind of unusual. Usually that nut you can pull out of these things and swap them out and replace them. But this one doesn't appear to be that way. It appears to be just cast right into the part. So that's not really going to be a very practical thing to redo, which has kind of got me rethinking the whole rebuilding these from the best components. We may just be using the one that came on the machine to begin with. I will note too that there was that little screw that in the top that I said I thought was going to be attached to the nut. As it turns out, this is a clamp to clamp the compound in place while you're using it. This piece here actually comes up. I don't know if I can get it out, but anyway, you can tighten that up and it just clamps it onto that dovetail and locks it in place. That's kind of a neat feature. I haven't seen that really on many other lathes. So, and I believe the other one's got the same type of thing in it. I'm going to just set these parts aside. We're going to pull the other compound apart and inspect it, and we'll make a decision once we get them apart. But I'm leaning towards probably just not using this one at all. Should be a very similar process here. Pulling this one apart. This is that nut that goes through there that tightens that clamp up. The other one was counterbored in there. This one here is just sticking all the way up. That's a little bit different. Let's see if we can get this gear off the end. All right, guys, I got these cleaned up, and a little surprised there's some pitting down here in these ways. I think what I'm going to do is take a couple of minutes and just do a little scraping on these and try to get those smoothed back up, because that's super, super rough right now. Don't really like the way that feels. I think we can really slick this thing up and make it move really good. It's always a good idea to, since I got it apart, to just go ahead and do this while we're in here. So I'm going to get my power scraper out. I'm going to put a blind scraping on this, and we're going to take this over to the surface plate. We'll get this flat across the bottom. We'll do a little scraping on the dovetails, and then we'll make the part here match the top here. and get them scraped into one another. Shouldn't take too long, hopefully. All right, we're just going to put a crosshatch on here. Like I said, we'll start doing it blind, then we'll take it to the surface plate, glue it up, and scrape it in. Clean the surface plate really good, and we've put down a little bit of this spot ink on here. Now we'll take our part and set it on this, and the high spots will transfer over. I can tell that is rough as a cob. Let's pull it off and see what we got. Well, no luck on this one in being an easy job, but just goes to show that we need to get this done. So you can see where my high spots are. We're going to come in here with a scraper, and we're just going to start plowing down these areas. We've obviously got a ways to go to get this where it needs to be. So let me get to work scraping. I'm just trying to move a lot of metal right now. We got a lot of metal to come off of this, it looks like. So I'm not being very precision by any means at this point. I'm just trying to knock these high points off. Well, that's after the first scraping. Made a big difference in one pass, but we've still got a ways to go. I can tell this corner down here is really sticking proud. I'm going to knock this down again, and we'll come back at it. This is just going to probably take several passes to get it cleaned up. I've been scraping on this for a while, and it's become very evident that these areas that we got some pitting appear to be a good bit lower than everything else. We've got pretty good contact except for this little patch here and this little patch here. So I set up a little indicator here on a stand, and I just want to kind of come in here and get an idea of how deep those pockets are. So right there I'm reading 0, and as you come down over here, notice I'm down at -1, and I get over in here, and I'm at -4. That's 4 thousandths deep. I was doing this a while ago, and I found one spot that was actually about 5 thousandths deep. That's about 2 thousandths in there. 2 to 3 thou. Now, I could continue on scraping this. I would eventually get there. But I think what I'm going to do, rule of thumb is if you got to scrape out more than about 3 thousandths, you're probably better off just machining some of the metal off. I wish I had my surface grinder going. I don't. I would just go put this on the surface grinder and grind it real quick. But I think what I am going to do is go over to the milling machine and put this on the mill, and just using a face mill, just barely skim this thing down and get it cleaned up. And then we can go scrape it in, and it should go a lot faster. I'll be here all day trying to scrape 4 thousandths out of that. So with scraping, you're typically only going to be removing a couple of 10 thousandths per pass. So, you're looking at quite a few passes just to get that down to size. So I'm going to go set this up on the milling machine, and we're going to do that real quick. Well, slight change in plans. Instead of taking this over to the milling machine, I ended up going to the surface grinder. And what I ended up doing was, the guy that bought my surface grinder, my old Landis surface grinder that I sold a while back, he's local. I called him up or sent him a message and asked if I could come borrow it. And he said, sure, come on over. So I just went over there and ground it on there. Basically, we ground the top here first, got that flat, then flipped it over and ground the bottom parallel. So this should be pretty darn flat. Got a little burr on the inside there. I'm going to hit that with a file, I think, before I do anything else. All right, so what we're going to do is I'm going to put a blind scraping on this. We'll take it over to the surface plate, and it should be pretty darn flat to start with. So this should scrape in pretty quickly with any luck. So let's kind of start this process over again. We'll put a crosshatch on it. All right, let's take our flat stone here. Knock the burrs off. All right, we'll blue it up. See what it looks like. See what we need to do. Oh yeah. Much better looking. All right, we're gonna work on hitting these areas here, and this should scrape in really quick. I mean, I've already got pretty much contact all the way across. Got a few high spots, so we'll work on that real quick, and we should have this knocked out in no time. Since I do have fairly good coverage on this already, I'm gonna be trying to make a little bit smaller scrape mark and do a little bit finer job. So this was the blade I was using before. It's got a fairly large radius. I'm going with the blade that's got a tighter radius. That's going to make a narrower cut. And I've also shortened my stroke a little bit on this. And I'm just going to kind of really focus on the areas that are blue and see if we can knock it down and increase our coverage here. So we come in here and same process, just kind of 90 degrees to one another, but I'm making much smaller scrape marks now than what I was making before. This is for more precision kind of finishing work here. And again, with scraping, we're going for individual scrape marks. You know, right now I got kind of areas of blue. I really want to break that up into little dots rather than big wide areas. And I'm really just kind of focusing on the areas that are blue and nothing else. The areas that aren't blue, I'm staying out of. Those are my low areas. I just want to kind of knock the high points back. We're going to clean that up. We'll take it over and blue it up again. Really nice pattern on here. Honestly, probably fine like it is. I'm not even think I'm gonna mess with it anymore. We got even pattern, and like I said, it went on a little bit thick, but the main thing is we got coverage from one end to the other. All right, now we'll work on getting the piece to match it. So we're basically going to be using this as the master and printing off over here to the piece that rubs against it and get it matched up. That's the game plan. That's just going to take my roller here and we'll ink these up really good, and that's going to be what we'll transfer over to the other piece. Basically what we got here is that these two lower parts is what that's going to rub up against. The top up here is just clearance. There's no contact in here at all. At least there shouldn't be. So we're not worried about that. And we'll also have contact on the dovetails, which we'll scrape in after we get through with this. So I think what we'll do is again start by just putting a blind crosshatch on here. Hopefully these will not be too bad. It's a little bit more difficult to grind these because of the dovetail. Probably just going to have to scrape them out. So I've got them up on some 2x4s here. Just because that post is on the bottom. And I think what I'm going to do is kind of turn this way, and I'll get in. I'm going to have to do one side and flip it around and do the other. And I put my other blade back in here that's got the flatter surface on it, and I've increased my stroke length again for more of a roughing pattern. And we'll just get this scraped out. And we're just gonna mate them together here. Rub them back and forth and transfer blue from one to the other, and it feels pretty rough, so I feel like the bottom one is gonna have some work to do to it. Let's see what we got. Not seeing much blue in here at all. I'm gonna probably have to put some contrast in here to be able to see these a little bit better. I can see a little bit of blue in here, but the brightness on there, I'm gonna get some yellow and contrast that, and it should pop out a little bit more. Let me do that. All right, so basically we just put a little bit of yellow ink on here, and that just gives you a little contrast where you don't have it quite as shiny. And I'm gonna put a little bit more blue on the piece we're gonna mate with, and we'll see if we can blue that up again. All right, let's try this again. Well, I think what's happening here is that after grinding and scraping these, we're actually making some contact between this surface and this surface, which should be a clearance. I see a little bit of blue in here, but I think what I'm going to have to do is actually knock the top of this surface down a little bit, just because I can actually see the rub marks in here where these are rubbing together. So I think what I want to do is we'll pull this nut out. We'll take this over to the milling machine with the fly cutter or whatever, and we're just going to take a couple of thousandths off of this, and that'll give me some clearance, and I think we can then start bluing this thing up properly. I was afraid that was going to happen because there's not a whole lot of clearance in here, but between the removing metal off of both sides, we've just sandwiched things down a little bit, so no big deal. We'll clear it out and move on. Let me go get that done real quick. To get that nut out, we should just be able to take these set screws out right here, or socket cap screws rather. And then drive that out. There we go. There's the nut. Just take it out. And I'm gonna go to the milling machine and we'll see if we can deck that down just a little bit. All right, I got this cleaned up. We got its contrast on here. We're gonna see if we can do this again and get a print this time. All right. Yeah, I got clearance in there now. I can see it. Much better. And we got some contact. So again, I can see where I need to work. So guys, you've seen the process. We're just going to come in here. I'm going to scrape down the blue areas, and we're going to go back and forth until we get a nice print on this. So I'm not going to bore you with it. I'll bring you back after a while. I've been scraping on this for about an hour or two, and probably about two, and I'm pretty happy with where I'm at. We've got good coverage from one end to the other as far as distribution, so I'm real happy with how all that looks. I think we're just going to call it here. I need to work on my dovetails, but all in all, I think at least mating between these two surfaces, it looks pretty good. We're going to call it. For scraping in these dovetails, I'm doing this all by hand, so I'm not using the power scraper. It's just too tight of an area to get into. And I've got a real narrow cutter, and I actually ground the top side down on one of this so that it's relieved. That allows me to get back into that corner. And I'm just using, again, a hand scraper. And we're just going to go in here and scrape it. Right now I'm doing my blind scraping, and what I will do is I will blind scrape both sides, and then we will start comparing them to one another by bluing up one and comparing to the other and hitting the high spots and just kind of going back and forth till we get it. So I got that direction. I'll come back the other direction, and we'll do this on all the dovetails, and then we'll match them. Same process as before. I'm just going to knock this out. So one little issue I got to work out here is this is the gib that goes over here. So basically you got it, this side is tapered, your gib is tapered, and the idea here is as you slide this gib forward, it narrows this up and it tightens it up. And it's just an adjustment to keep so you can tighten this thing up as the ways wear down on it. Problem is that after we've ground off a little bit and scraped and everything else, the gib is sticking up a little bit higher. There's a little lip on here. I'm just guessing it's about 15 thousandths or so. I need to narrow that out. Now, this gib is kind of trapezoidal shaped, so it's the same height from one end to the other. Now, if I go this way, it's tapered, but on this side, it's flat. And the easy thing to do would be stick it on the surface grinder, but I don't have a surface grinder right now that I can use because mine is being worked on. I'd have to go back over to my friends, and I may end up doing that. I may see if I can hold this in the milling machine and just skim it real lightly over there on the mill too, just to get a little bit of thickness off of this. But we're going to have to get that knocked down a little bit. Let me work on that and see what we can do. All right, so now I've got clearance in here. And I'll tell you what I did. I didn't really have a good way to mill this on the milling machine. I didn't have a way to hold it on the milling machine. I really didn't want to run out to use a surface grinder because it was just going to take too long. So I just went over to my belt sander, and just by hand, I just sanded that surface down a little bit. This is not a precision. I just need clearance in there. So I got the job accomplished. We have clearance in there now. So now this is up higher than this by just a little bit. That's all we need. So now what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to put a blind scraping on one side of this, and we'll start fitting this together. See if we can get it to go together. Now for scraping it, I've got a little magnetic chuck that I've got this on, and I'm hoping that's going to hold it for me to power scrape it. All right, I went and just blew that on the surface plate, and we're going to scrape that in until we get a good coverage from end to end. All right, I think I'm happy with that. That'll work for a gib. I think we are ready to try to dry put this together. I've already kind of scraped in my gibs. I didn't show that, but it's really just tight fit in there. But it's bluing up and scraping down. We got decent contact in there. So yeah, let's see if it'll go together. So let's start by putting this nut back in here. The one kind of unknown thing I gotta see about is, am I going to have to shave a little bit off the bottom of this nut to make it where it'll line right? There's no way of knowing until we try it, so that's what we're going to do. We're just going to try it, and if we have to make an adjustment there, we will. Take the top part here, slide that on top. That feels really good. We'll take our gib. Our scrape side is on the inside. All right, we're just going to screw this in until it gets a little bit on the tight side. I'm pressing up against the wedge right now, so it is tightening in, and it's starting to tighten up there. All right, that's real tight. I'm going to back it off just a little bit. We'll put the other one in the other side. This will lock it in place where that is not moving around. All right, I have done some adjusting with the gib screw. Put a little whey oil in there, and it is sliding really nice. I'm happy with that. There's not any detectable side-to-side movement, so everything seems like it's snugging up just fine. So I think we're ready to put the dial back on and make sure that the alignment's going to work there, and make sure we're not going to have to make an adjustment on the height of that nut. We'll just have to see. I kind of feel like we probably are, but maybe we'll get lucky. Let's see. Kind of tight. I think we're going to have to adjust that screw a little bit. That's not lining up. The screws will go in, but I could tell it was just tight, and it's pulling it down a little bit farther than what it needs to be. So let's take this back apart and see what we can do about lowering that screw down just a little bit, that nut down a little bit. So based on what I had to take off of the gib, I need to take about 20 thousandths off the bottom of this nut. I've got it over here in the 4-jaw chuck on the lathe. I have indicated off of both the stem as well as the face, and we've got it running pretty darn true. So I'm just going to come in here with a cutter. We're going to touch off. I'm going to zero in my Z-axis, and we're just going to go in 20 thousandths. That'll lower that down just a little bit. So another little modification I want to make while I got this apart is, this is the lock that locks the gib in there to keep this thing from moving. There's a little aluminum clamp up underneath the bottom that just tightens up in there on that dovetail. And this had, where's it at? This socket cap screw with a washer on top sticking out above the top of this. The other compound that I had that recess where it was counterbored, where it went below the surface. And I kind of like that, just a cleaner look. So I've got a counterbore here. I'm going to go over and just counterbore that hole where that socket cap screw is below the surface. I think it'll just be a little bit nicer. So let me go do that real quick. All right, I like that a lot better. And I'm going to go ahead and put that little clamp on. All right, that's loose where it'll go up on there. That's much better. All right, I think we're ready to put it back together again. All right, guys, I have got this back together, and appears to be working good. Very happy with how this turned out. I do need to put a little paint on it, and it'll be ready to go back on. I'm going to paint it tonight, let it dry. The only thing that other modification I think I'm going to do to this is back here on this knob. This does not have a handle on it, and all my other compounds that I use do, and it just gives me a little bit more leverage to turn this thing with. So I think I'm going to order me another press-on little knob, and we'll drill out this and put one in there. The other compound had a knob in it, although the knob's missing, but you can see where the hole was there. So I think it's a very fair modification to make, and will make it a little bit easier to use. So we'll get that done, get that ordered, and when that comes in, we'll make that quick modification to it. But she's ready to paint and go back on. I'm real happy with it. Well, I think we are ready to put this back on here. I've only got 3 studs coming up through here. There should be a 4th one, I believe, according to my holes in my compound, but I don't know. I'm not even, there's a way to drop one in there, but you'd have to take this whole thing apart to get another bolt in there. So we're just going to go with 3. That's evidently what was on it. Let's see here. I have to get my holes lined up. There we go. And I'm going to have to get some nuts up in there too. Looks like I'm going to have to pick it up and slide the nuts in and then drop it back down on there. All right, we're going to try this again. I've got a couple of parallels I'm just putting up underneath the bottom of this to hold it up to get these nuts started in here. So let's try put this back on again. Get that hole lined up on the bottom. All right, so now I've got where I can slide these nuts up in here and kind of get them in position. I really need a thinner parallel to drop down on. Let me get some of those. Now let's see if I can get these nuts to start up on there. It's in that kind of captured slot, so it's a little tight. All right, the compound is installed. Very good. Well, with the compound on here, she is really starting to look like a lathe again. This is exciting. I think we're at about a stopping point for this video. We got this on here. I will make one comment, and I know some of you guys are going to say, well, this whole tracing attachment thing takes up a lot of the swing on this lathe, and yes, it does, but you can move this thing around out of the way where it's kind of out towards me in this direction to get more swing over the saddle here. And which is part of the reason why I want to replace this with just a riser block rather than having this whole tracing attachment that I'm not going to use. I don't have the hydraulics and stuff to run it even if I wanted to use it. So it's kind of just not really useful for me. So it is a little bit of an inconvenience, but I'm going to draw up some patterns or draw up some stuff and get a pattern made and get a riser block cast and hopefully get that done. But in the meantime, we can at least use the lathe like it is. And what's left to do? Well, I mean, I put some little handles on this thing. There's a bunch of little things that need to be done. I need to get the chip pan painted. I've got a tool post to go on here. I need to get that mounted up on here. Um, some things like that, but we're just about ready to actually start using this lathe. I'm really excited about it. So guys, with that, that's going to be a wrap on this video. As always, thanks so much for watching. Please do subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Those thumbs up and comments are always greatly appreciated. Hit that bell icon up there to get notifications when new videos are posted. Please leave some comments down below. And big, huge thank you to guys that do subscribe to the channel, as well as those who support the channel financially through Patreon, PayPal, etc. Enables me to take the time to be able to shoot the videos and bring this content to you. Guys, with that, we're going to sign off. Again, we'll catch you on the next video. Thanks for watching.